Hi, I'm Bob Vila. Welcome home again to our little farmhouse project here in Medford, Massachusetts. Today we're installing a garage door in the barn part of the project here behind me. Also some drywall installation inside for a veneer coat of plaster as well as for tape and joint compound. And we'll also be showing you some beautiful fencing and privacy screening from Brattleworks. Stick around. It's good to have you home again. All right, we're in the loft area of the barn, and Bill Reed from U.S. Gypsum is here, and we're going to talk about sheetrock. Now, Bill, everybody just says sheetrock generically, but that's a trademark of USG, right?
That's correct, it is, Bob.
They invented it?
Yes, we invented the product back in 1917.
I didn't know it'd been around that long. I think about Rocklaff kind of back in the 1940s and 50s. They made it in this size, 4x8 sheets?
Yes.
Drywall generically, imperial board when you're skim coating. What do you call it when you're just taping it, the joints?
When you're just taping it is just sheetrock gypsum panels.
Okay. Now, they're also talking about this being a new improved type of sheetrock. What's new and improved about it?
Yeah, in 2000, Bob, we come out with a new core technology for the board that made the boards actually stronger, made them lighter for the gentleman handling them, and also for cutting and scoring of the material.
Right, so that makes the job go more quickly.
That's correct.
And they're busy at work on the gable end wall back here, and I love the way they can just score it, snap it, and keep on going. Let's watch.
Go. That's the ease of the material. When they are hanging imperial board, unlike typical gypsum sheetrock, the screw spacing on these here is 12 inches on center, where regular sheetrock gypsum panels that are going to be used for taping would typically be screwed 16 inches on center. And what they want is the screws to actually be flush with the paper, just a hair dimpled.
Just a hair of a dimple.
Just a hair dimple, yeah. And the reason for that is because of the face paper itself is such a wet application with veneer plaster that they want to make sure that you get a good solid adhesion to the wall with the screws so that they don't pop.
It's the face paper that makes the chemical reaction with the imperial plaster to create the bond, right?
That's correct, yeah. This face paper is treated and it's absorbent to take the veneer plaster.
Now, it's great how one guy can handle a 10-foot sheet like this, snap it, carry off what he needs.
Yeah, and if you notice on the ends, it snaps pretty clean in that. Years ago, it used to be a lot of ragged edges on it, and what they would end up having to do would be to rasp that edge.
Personal experience with that.
There you go.
Sure. He's putting a back cut on it there, huh?
That's correct, yep.
What's the purpose of that?
So that the back of the sheet doesn't hit before the front does, so if he's putting it up on the, when he's putting it up on the wall itself, it's a nice tight fit.
Now, Bill, why should the board always be hung horizontally?
There's no real reason for it being horizontal, Bob, other than the fact that it's easier for them and it covers a much larger square footage than regular standing a sheet up 8 or 9 feet.
It's easier for installation. And
That's
what
correct.
about when you have a situation like we have right now with a window? Why not just butt pieces up against the sides and the top?
Okay, the reason for that is to keep it from cracking. If I were to butt it up to one side of the window and the other side and just go straight up, when I tape that, I'm putting in a weak spot right off the bat, and what that would cause would be cracking.
Don't touch it.
Now, the Blueboard and skim coat application is typically not a do-it-yourself job, is it?
No, it's not. No, that requires a number of years of using a product and understanding how to use the product, plus a variety of specialty tools that they need.
What kind of plaster do they actually use?
This is a veneer plaster that's going to be installed in this particular job. Years ago, everything being conventional plasters, the cost is very prohibitive today to do that. So when the veneer plasters came out, a lot of people, they bought into it because it gave them a monolithic look, or a more monolithic than gypsum panels, and it gave them an abuse-resistant finish.
Yeah. Now here we're using a combination of skim coat, plaster, and just traditional sheetrock and tape.
That's correct, yep.
And the sheetrock and tape walls are down in the studio where the homeowner wants to have the option of tacking up artwork and doesn't want to have a hard veneer plaster surface. Next, we'll visit the factory where they manufacture our red cedar trellis and lattice fence. The hardscape is the part of the landscape architecture, if you will, that involves fencing, and in this case, we're looking at trellis and lattice, and Fred Good from Brattleworks is here to explain all about it.
Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, how are you? Now, this, the bottom is lattice?
The bottom of this panel is a privacy lattice with a 1-inch opening and a 1-inch vertical member.
And they're just laid on top of one another, there's no
laid
nailing.
on, and they're fastened with a stainless steel fastener and with waterproof glue.
Okay, and then this top section?
The top section is trellis. It's a full dado. Again, it's glued and fastened with an aluminum fastener.
And these are all terms that come out of the French design tradition, n'est-ce pas?
Primarily French in orientation,
Yeah.
and European.
Treillage. And what the idea is here is just to provide kind of a screening and a backdrop for a shrub border, I believe.
Correct. This is privacy so that you can have planting on the front and you have some light and air that comes through that enhances the plant material that will eventually be put in here in front of the fence.
What kind of wood do you use?
This is Western red cedar. Typically it's a dark red, but Western red cedar is a little bit of a misnomer. It also
varies.
comes in very light colors.
Sure. And you could, of course, stain it, or you could leave it natural to weather.
It can be weathered like this. It'll gray out in about 6 to 9 months, or it could be stained in any variety of colors.
Now, Fred, how about installing it? I kind of see a pipe down there. What kind of a post installation do you do?
The installation, there's 2 approaches to this. One is where the wooden post is actually put right into the ground.
Now, when you do that, what kind of a life expectancy can you get?
Bob, you should end up with about 15 years of life expectancy in well-drained soil.
Well-drained soil, that's the key. And now this is a product like, well, this is Western red cedar,
Western red cedar.
There's a natural repellent to insect damage and rot, right?
All your cedars have tannin in them.
Yeah.
And tannin is basically a natural inhibitor of mold and bacteria,
Okay.
which gives the wood life.
Okay. Now, the system that you're using is a little bit modified.
Right.
You've got the post.
The homeowner here specified this approach, and this really combines the best of 2 worlds. You have a steel pipe that actually goes in the ground, which has a incredibly long life, and that's put into concrete. And then you have the beauty of red cedar above ground, as you could see in these other panels.
Yeah, and so what you're doing over here, you've dug a hole. How deep?
The hole in the ground is approximately 2 feet deep, and the process basically is water will be put into the hole about half full, and then a ready mixed concrete will be dropped into the hole and mixed.
You don't have to mix it separately.
You don't
just
need to
add
mix
it
it
into the
above
hole.
ground. It can be added right into the hole and mixed in the hole in the ground. And these products either come with an accelerant to speed up the process of hardening, or in fact, depending upon the schedule, you don't have to use that.
Okay, and now I'm just noticing you've got the loose section that goes up here. This is what really gives this its sturdiness, right?
That's your trellis panel, which is used here for a topper, and those are full half dados.
Excellent.
That are dropped into the slots.
So these are just simply installed up here and screws attach it to the post. And then what about at the bottom? Don't you have to mix that up? I see. That's the way the fence installers do it. Well, why don't we take a visit to Fred's workshop to see how all of this is manufactured. So Fred, everything's made out of Western red cedar. Is that what we're looking at here?
That's what we have here, Bob. It's full 1.25 by 4 inches, rough lumber right from the mill.
So this is not what I can get at the lumber yard around the corner.
No, this is more of an industrial product that we use in the manufacturing of our trellis.
And then what are we looking at here?
These are boards that have gone through milling, and this is the very first step in trellis production, which we do on our dado machine, which I can show you right over here.
Over here. So the dado machine is not like when I have a dado blade on my radial arm saw. This is a little bit more complicated, right?
This one's a little bit larger. In fact, this particular machine is built for us.
How many blades?
It has a total of 11 blades that cut the board all at once.
So in one pass, you've put in all of these dados.
That's correct. This will actually come through the machine on the other side. It'll pass over the blades.
So let's close it up and watch it in operation.
Very good.
All right, well, that's a pretty clean cut. 11 of them, huh? What's the next step?
The next step, Bob, is we go over to the molder and rip this into 3 different strips on the full length basis.
Okay, let's see that. Okay, so now we're ready for assembly, right?
That's right, Bob.
Okay. Now, what kind of glue is used in this process?
This is a water-based, waterproof glue that we use on the cedar.
And so they've put a bead in each one of all the dados, and now they just kind of make the arrangement, right?
They spread it out
Yeah.
so that it is spaced, ready for assembly.
And the table is part of the process because it's already got the measurements laid out. Now, this material comes in pretty wet, doesn't it?
It comes in 15 to 20% moisture.
The Western red cedar does.
Correct.
And does it matter working it that wet?
Well, you need to keep a high moisture because it's going to be outdoors.
That's right. So if you dried it and put it back outdoors and it got wet, then you'd have to worry about it moving.
Exactly.
Warpage or whatever. Is that all there is to it, or do they actually have to nail the individual?
Once they have put the dados together, as you see, they will use an aluminum fastener around the entire piece, and that will hold it together while it's curing.
Now, do you use aluminum fasteners just because it's going to be in the weather?
We use aluminum because when we finish with this assembly, we will actually sand the panel, and so as not to cause sparking in our sanding machine, we use an aluminum fastener.
I see. All right, so at this station, you're going to cut off all these stubs, right?
Right.
What kind of saw is it?
This is a 15-foot panel saw for cutting these trellis panels.
And so you've got a jig that sets it up right in the exact location, and then the press of a button to hold it down in place. And at the press of another button, here comes the saw blade. Boy, that's pretty nifty. And so now we've got almost a finished panel, except you still have to put it through a sander, right?
Right, Bob. We're going to smooth the top and the bottom with a sander.
Well, that's nice and clean, isn't it?
Smooths it right up.
So this is what we've got out at our place. Now, how do you make the lattice?
It's a similar operation with a few changes.
All right, so how do you cut all these really fine pieces for the lattice work?
We do that on the molder. We're changing the cutting head so that we rip 14 strips at one pass.
And what are the dimensions?
They're 1 inch wide by 5/16 thick.
And now, in terms of assembling all of this, it could be a nightmare. What do you do here?
On this table here, we lay down the horizontal strips and glue will be applied, the same kind of glue that we saw on the trellis.
So you basically are just putting these as a guide to apply a bead of glue evenly and always in the right spot.
That's right, Bob.
All right, that's all the glue. Now what?
Now, Bob, we're going to raise the top of this, and then I'm going to pick up 24 strips at a time,
Without dropping them.
preferably,
And don't move them around too much.
and I'm going to bring them over to the lattice assembly table.
Okay. And at the lattice assembly table, you've got stacks and stacks and stacks of pre-cut material that just rises to the occasion. So you line them up.
Line them up.
And then you yank out that, and then I guess it's all by hand, right? So each one of these knobs guides your work, and now how do you fasten them?
Now we're going to take an air gun, and with a stainless steel fastener, we'll put a pattern across these so that we can lift the sheet right out of the jig.
Do you nail them at every intersection?
No, we don't nail them every intersection. We'll go around the entire perimeter and then a pattern across the middle.
I see. All right, and that takes the mystery out of the lattice work. Fred, thanks for the tour.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay. Coming up next, we'll be hanging drywall for a tape and joint compound finish. Stick around. We're back with Bill Reed from USG, and we're talking sheetrock instead of Blueboard and plaster now, because the homeowner wanted the ability to just put nails everywhere, huh?
Yes, yeah, that was, from what I understand, that they didn't want the hardness of the plaster to go through with little push pins.
So this will be a traditional installation, sheetrock wallboard with taped joints, right?
That's correct.
And
yeah.
what the fellows are doing here is starting to hang it. You don't hang it any differently than if you were still using the Blueboard, right?
Well, this is going to hang a little bit differently. If you notice on here, what he's done is he's looked at the height of that wall. He's taken some dimensions. And what he wants to do is not put a ripped piece in the center. Typically, this wall right now is about 8'6". And what he's doing at this point in time, by putting a larger piece on top, he'll end up with around a 2-foot piece on the bottom.
Okay.
An 8-inch piece in the middle is not a good idea, only because if anyone would hit that with an elbow, even once it's finished, it's a weak spot on the board in between two studs.
Right.
And as far as the screw spacing on this here, the screw spacing on sheetrock gypsum panels is 16 inches on center, with the veneer plaster, it's 12 inches on center.
Now, what is that tool that he uses to make the cutout?
That's typically it's what they call a rotozip. What that does just makes their job a lot easier than using a meat saw or a small hand saw to cut it out.
And now that wall is basically ready for tape and joint compound, right, Bill?
It's ready to go.
Okay, well, thanks for coming on the show.
Bob, thank you very much.
Now let's go out to the outside and look at our new garage door. We'll be back in a moment to hang a new garage door, so don't go away. The exterior of this little barn is in some areas in pretty rough shape. As you can see, the shingles here haven't been repaired yet, and the doors do have to be replaced. We'll be talking about that maybe next week, but right now we've got a new garage door being installed by Tom Rinaldi over here, and this is a traditional kind of 6-panel door made out of hemlock, which means that you got a good sturdy wooden door. It's a good insulator, and it also gives you the option of painting or staining. Here comes the top panel. And the top panel has glass inserts so that you'll always have a little bit of daylight coming in. And you're also kind of preserving the look of the old barn, because this does harken somewhat to earlier times. Hope you got a hold of it, don't you? Good. All right. Well, this obviously will take a finish coat of paint. Clopay Reserve Collection, that's how you get these, and you can get them in a variety of designs. This is a pretty classic standard. We're running short on time. Come home again next week when we'll be installing a mahogany deck and using tumbled concrete pavers for the back entry. Also, we'll be skim coating the interior walls with veneer plaster. Till then, I'm Bob Vila. It's good to have you home again. For lots of information and resources for your home improvement project, check out my website at bobvila.com.